This is a deck tech for Cosima, God of the Voyage. This is a spoiler from Kaldheim that reads 2 and a blue for 2/4. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may exile Cosima. If you do, it gains whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control. If Cosima is exiled, you may put a Voyage counter on it. If you don't, return Cosima to the battlefield with X+1/+1 counters on it, and draw X cards, where X is the number of Voyage counters on it. It is also a modal dual-faced card, so you can choose to cast the other side when you cast it. The flip side, the Omenkeel, is 1 and a blue for a 3/3. Legendary Artifact Vehicle. Whenever a vehicle you control deals combat damage to a player, that player exiles that many cards from the top of their library. You may play lands from among those cards for as long as they remain exiled, and it has Crew 1. So if you do not know, Crew is tap any number of creatures you control with power 1 or more. This vehicle becomes an artifact creature until end of turn. So at the moment, it's just a legendary artifact vehicle. It's not an artifact creature unless you crew it, so you wouldn't be able to attack with it. Before we begin, please subscribe. At this deck's core, it is a vehicle deck. You are going to crew your vehicles and attack people. So a good example of vehicle could be Smuggler's Copter, which is 2 for a 3/3 with flying. When Smuggler's Copter attacks or blocks, you may draw a card. If you do, discard a card, and it has Crew 1. So first of all, it's a 3/3 with flying. You're going to be able to do a lot of damage quickly and easily. Second of all, you get to draw and discard with this, so it's just going to allow you to filter. Another good example on the higher end could be Sky Sovereign, Console Flagship, which is 5 for 6/5 with flying. Whenever Sky Sovereign, Console Flagship enters the battlefield or attacks, it deals 3 damage to target creature or planeswalker an opponent controls. So you can attack with this and you can just constantly get rid of your opponent's creatures every single turn. So this deck can have value from both sides. Being able to have the lands exiled with the Omenkeel and being able to get value from playing lands with Cosima is just incredible. Optimally, you could even have both, because then you can get the lands exiled and cast them, and then when you cast them, you will put Voyage counters on Cosima, which will eventually draw you cards. So how are we supposed to get both? Well, clones. That's how. So according to the legend rule, if you have 2 copies of a legend, and both sides of this are a legend, then if you have 2, you have to get rid of one of them. So we copy either Cosima or the Omenkeel, and then we sacrifice our actual commander, and then we can recast it from the command zone. Do keep in mind that the command cost when you cast either the Omenkeel or Cosima, and it will be applied to both sides. So an example of a clone could be Phyrexian Metamorph. 3 and a Phyrexian blue for a 0/0. You may have it enter the battlefield as a copy of any artifact or creature on the battlefield, except it's an artifact in addition to its other types. So you can make a copy of Cosima or the Omenkeel, then you can just cast Cosima or the Omenkeel. And if you made it this far on the video, please subscribe. Another category is artifact synergies. So these are things that take advantage of either the fact that you have a lot of artifacts, we have over 40 artifacts, or that take advantage of the fact that we have a lot of artifact creatures because our vehicles will become artifact creatures. One example of this could be Thopter Sky Network, which is 2 blue for an enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you control an artifact, create a 1/1 colorless Thopter artifact creature token with flying. Whenever 1 or more artifact creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, draw a card. So if we deal damage to our opponents with our vehicles, we are going to be able to draw a card. Another good example could be Steel Overseer, which is 2 for an artifact creature 1/1. Tap. Put a +1/+1 counter on each artifact creature you control. We are going to have a lot of artifact creatures. We have vehicles and we have just artifact creatures. So being able to put +1/+1 counters on all of them is great. Second of all, we can activate this multiple times, and not just every single turn. We can activate this multiple times during our turn, because we have a lot of different untap effects in this deck. Speaking of untap effects, we have landfall. One example of landfall could be retreat to Coralhelm. 2 and a blue for an enchantment. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, choose 1. You may tap or untap target creature and scry 1. So we can just untap our creatures which we are tapping to either crew or to something else. So another example of something we would want to tap would be our ramp. So Dreamscape Artist is 1 and a blue for a 1/1. 2 blue tap. Discard a card. Sacrifice a land. Search your library for up to 2 basic land cards, then put them onto the battlefield. Shuffle your library. So functionally, because those lands enter the battlefield untapped, and the land you sacrifice can be tapped, you're only spending 1 mana with this. So 1 mana tap, discard a card, sacrifice a land, and then you can get 2 basic land cards. So first of all, this combos with Retreat to Coralhelm, because you can get a land, then you can get 2 lands, you can untap your Dreamscape Artist, you can tap it again, and just keep on doing this over and over and over again as long as you have mana and cards in hand. And second of all, it's just an incredibly powerful way to get landfall. This is sacrificing 1 and getting 2 things. So with Cosima, we can get 2 Voyage counters on Cosima for every single time that we activate this. Another example of a ramp card could be Scaretiller, which is 4 for a 1/4. When it becomes tapped, choose 1. You may put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield tapped, and return target land from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. So first of all, you can tap your creatures whenever you want. With crew, you can tap them whenever you want. Bare minimum, you're going to get this trigger once per turn. Second of all, you're not going to be playing cards from your hand as much as you usually would. You're probably going to use your land per turn on the Omenkeel's trigger. Second of all, we can take advantage of putting lands from our hand and the ones from our field because we have a couple ways to put lands in our graveyard, and because we have some lands that will sacrifice themselves to get other lands, like Evolving Wilds, which is a land and you can tap it and sacrifice it to search your library for a basic land card, put it on the battlefield tapped, then shuffle your library. If you made it this far in the video, please subscribe. We also, of course, have draw and removal. So in terms of draw, we have Tome of Legends, which is 2 for an artifact. Tome of Legends enters the battlefield with a page counter on it. Whenever your commander enters the battlefield or attacks, put a page counter on Tome of Legends. 1 tap, remove a page counter from Tome of Legends, draw a card. With Cosima, it's going to be entering the battlefield and leaving the battlefield all the time. And with the Omenkeel, it's going to enter the battlefield early and cheap, and you're going to have it be attacking a lot. So either way, you're just going to get a huge amount of draw from this. We also have Fallow Sage, which is 3 and a blue for a 2/2. When it becomes tapped, you may draw a card. So as I said previously, we have the ability to untap things, and we always have the ability to tap things. So the number of times we untap it is going to be the number of times that we can draw a card, which just is incredible. Plus, we can do that, we untap it every turn, so we can draw a card every turn, bare minimum. We also have removal, so one good example of removal is Search Banner. Search Banner is 2 blue for a 2/2. When it becomes tapped, you may pay 1 and a blue. If you do, return target permanent to its owner's hand. We also, of course, have counter spells like Counterspell, which is blue for an instant, counter target spell. And we have Cyclonic Rift. Beyond that, we have a couple of fetch lands like Evolving Wilds, like I said, which is a land, tap, sacrifice Evolving Wilds, search your library for a basic land card, put it on the battlefield tap, then shuffle your library. So there's a lot of different reasons this is good. The first is we get 2 landfall triggers. 1 when Evolving Wilds enters, and 1 when we get that basic land card and put it on the battlefield tapped. The second is we have a couple things that synergize with the lands going into my graveyard. Overall, this is an incredibly powerful vehicle deck, and we can crew our vehicles and attack with them and deal a lot of damage. This is going to get us things exiled with the Omenkeel, and then we can have Cosima and play tons of lands and draw tons of cards. And when we have ramp and draw, it just is an incredible combination. Plus, we can run a lot of artifact synergies, and it just makes an incredibly well-rounded deck. This is also an $160 deck, even though it has some incredibly expensive cards like Cyclonic Rift and Rhystic Study. You could easily bring this under a $100 deck, or maybe even under a $50 deck, and it really wouldn't be missing very much. A notable thing is Proliferate does not work on Cosima if Cosima is exiled, because Proliferate does not proliferate things in exile. It will only proliferate permanents on the battlefield or players, not cards in exile. Made it to the end of this video, you probably enjoyed it, so please like, subscribe, leave a comment, and join my Discord server. Link in the description. There is also links in the description to whatever I talked about in this video, so it should all be there. Thank you for listening, and I will see you next time.